maybe they are. Yeah, maybe they are. So glad you're here, intrepid ones, and on Zoom. Would you rise in body or spirit and join in our gathering song, which this morning is One More Step.
Hello, dear ones. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pam Berenbaum. I'm the worship associate today, and it's been fun and rewarding to collaborate with the Reverend Tricia Hart, one of our interim two co-ministers, and Julia Santerre, our Director of Religious Exploration, and also Miles Zarathustra. We're very grateful for you, Miles, for filling in for our musical director today. So I give greetings to everyone, those of you who are here, those of you on Zoom. Hello, Zoom people. I can't see you, but I'm detecting the inner beauty from here. And also greetings for those who might watch the recording later. I want to give a special welcome for anyone, to anyone that might be here for the first time. We're really glad you're here. We welcome all backgrounds and identities here at CVUUS. Everyone is welcome. And if you are new, visiting for the first time, please fill out one of the blue little sheets of paper that are in the welcome desk, sort of straight out of the sanctuary. and that will allow us to keep in touch with you. And for everybody else, you can also write out, right outside the sanctuary, there are pink cards and yellow cards. I have examples. So here's the blue sheet for the new folks. There are pink cards that go to the caring network and the ministers if you have a concern or need pastoral care or need some kind of help. And then the yellow cards are for joys and concerns, milestones, passages, and I will read the yellow cards later on in the service. If you need hearing assistance, I've been told I have a backyard voice, but if you need hearing assistance, you can see the tech team in the far corner. Margie's raising her hands back there, and we have little portable hearing assistance devices for you. When on the order of service, the songs are marked with an asterisk, and we invite you to stand, to rise in body or spirit. I usually rise my spirit from a seated position, and you're absolutely free to do that. Nobody has to stand. And so as I said, I'm a worship associate, so I'm one of the volunteer teams that helps make CVUUS run. And there's a whole bunch of teams with dozens of people helping out all the time. And the one that we want to thank today are the flower buds, who provide fresh flowers for us to look at, or dried flowers, the decorations upstairs and downstairs that just lift up our space here. And so thank you to all the folks who provide that. So lovely, especially in the winter where you kind of feel like, will I ever see a flower again? But I am noticing that I feel like birds are singing louder than they usually do in the morning, and I always feel like they know something. You know what I mean? Like spring is definitely coming. So that's great. So this beautiful winter wonderland that we are, where our building is right now, is on land that was inhabited and stewarded for thousands of years by the Western Abenaki people. And we know that this land that we're on right now was stolen, and that the native people of this region were disrespected and dishonored. So even though we are joyous to be in this beautiful space, we do need to remember that. And much of the Abenaki culture was, and their experience was completely erased. And we're committed to learning more about their culture, learning from that ancient knowledge, and hopefully moving past just acknowledgement to action so that we can uphold our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. So with that, let's light our chalice, and I'd like to invite Spencer up. I think Spencer's, all right, my man Spencer is here. Great. Let's make sure that the, actually, I gotta find the words of the chalice lighting, Spencer. Here it is. And is it on? Perfect. Please join me in reading the chalice lighting, which is in your order of service and also on the screen. We light our chalice in the spirit of transformation. Nothing? Everything moving, shifting, changing, guide us all to a wild and holy vision of our shared humanity. Yes, Spencer did great. We've got some matches here. Spencer, do you know how to light a match? All right. There you go. There you go. Fantastic. Grace under pressure here. Look at Spencer. He's like, we are going to solve this problem. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you so much. Things don't always go the way we plan, and that's why we have backup plans. Very cool under pressure. Thank you, Spencer. We did. We did. I interrupted them slightly to help Spencer. Yeah, we're good.
Spencer, I think, is out in the lobby now. I was going to tell him that my youngest son, for years, was pretty sure that I had gone into ministry, become a minister, in order to indulge my pyromania. And it is true that in coming-of-age programs, kids these days often learn to strike matches for the first time. So thank you, Spencer. The opening words today are from the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He called this piece, "Love Your Enemies." Now, there is a reason, he wrote, that I think that Jesus says, "Love your enemies." It is this, that love has within it a redemptive power. There is a power that eventually transforms individuals. Just keep being friendly to that person. Just keep loving them, and they can't stand it too long. Oh, they react in many ways in the beginning. They react with guilt feelings, and sometimes they'll hate you a little more at the transition period, but just keep loving them. And by the power of your love, they will break down under the load. That's love, you see. There's something about love that builds up and is creative. There is something about hate that tears down and is destructive. So, love your enemies. I'd invite you all to join in our first hymn today. It's number 169 in your gray hymnal. If you need the music, please sing, as Pam said, however you're most comfortable, "We shall overcome."
We shall Well done, everyone. I feel like that was a really good rendition, and I loved the jazzy background. So that was great. And actually, today, if you don't know me, I'm Julia Santerre. I am the Religious Exploration Coordinator, and today I'm going to be talking, and maybe more than talking, about songs of resistance. And We Shall Overcome always makes me think of the Civil Rights Movement, the anti-segregation protests, and Martin Luther King Jr. And I recently learned from Reverend Tricia, as we were preparing the service, that actually the song We Shall Overcome has like more of a background, and it actually came from a song sung by the farm and tobacco workers down in the South that was called I'll Be All Right. It ended up at the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee, which was a school basically for nonviolent activism and social change. And there, it was kind of adapted into All Overcome. And then Pete Seeger, went to a workshop there, heard the song, and tweaked it into the We Shall Overcome that we know today. So it's actually got a farther history back than even I knew. And it continues, because I believe and I feel like music can tap into something, to feelings, to ideas, even stronger than words can sometimes. Sometimes you can't, even the most passionate speakers, like they do a great job, but there's something in music that really can evoke a feeling. And so the songs of resistance continue. And today there is a new generation of songwriters. Every generation has songwriters and resistance songwriters. And I found one from this group called Singing Resistance, and they have been working in Minneapolis and other places, and they compile songs written today, contemporarily, and they teach workshops where they teach the songs, and they also just lead them in the streets. And so I am going to teach you one today. It's very short, and before we sing, I would like to say that it does not matter how you sound. It does not matter if we're all on the same note. It does not matter if you are if you know what note you're on, right? The point is to evoke the feeling. So I want you to just kind of get out of your head. It's not about how it sounds, it's about the feeling behind it. And I'm gonna do my best this morning. So I'm gonna sing a phrase and have you repeat after me. And hopefully I can remember it correctly. Okay. Ready? Hold on. Hold on. My dear ones, here comes the dawn. My dear ones, here comes the dawn. We'll do repeating one more time. Hold on. Hold on. My dear ones, here comes the dawn. My dear ones, here comes the dawn. All right, let's try it all together. And I forgot to mention it's by Heidi Wilson, so I'm going to stick that in there because that's important. So let's try it all together. Ready? Hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Let's do it again, but picture someone or a group of people in your head that you want to sing it to. Ready? Hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Now let's sing it to ourselves, a little softer if you would like. Hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Guys, I'm feeling it. Okay, so I first saw this song actually on Instagram because the Singing Resistance group was leading it in Minneapolis, and they were singing it to neighbors who were scared to come out of their homes. And so Jordan kindly found the video for me online, And so we're going to watch that, and it sings through it 3 times, and you are welcome to sing along if you would like. Hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes. Let's turn and sing it to the neighborhood. Hold on, hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes the dawn. Once more to the neighborhood. Hold on, hold on, my dear ones, here comes. Let's turn back and sing it to each other now. One more time with all the harmonies. Thank you all for singing with me today. I'm going to lead the children and youth out to Fen House, and today, while we leave, I invite the rest of you to continue singing Hold On. So you can do it without me. I heard even harmonies in there, so I'm not worried. All right, ready? Go ahead.
Now we will be singing that song all day in our heads, which is a wonderful thing. There are, as many of you know, many, many ways to become more involved in this congregation beyond just showing up on Sunday, though we love it when you show up on Sunday. And thanks. How many people are on Zoom today? Do we know? 14 people, at least some of whom are home because it's warmer and safer there. So thank you all for coming out. But there are lots of ways of being involved, and I want to make sure that you know that on the other side of your order of service is a whole list, a full page of ways that you can be involved. Sorry, maybe this is not nice of me to say that you can no longer sign up for steel drum lessons, but you should know that they're going to be happening for the whole month of what month are we about to have? March. So it's exciting that a bunch of people are going to let Jen help them into that world. Brett Millier is starting a series on spirituality and faith in short stories. I have studied my calendar, Brett, to see if I can, and I can't do it too many Tuesday nights, but some of you can, and it's still possible to register for that. Is that right? As far as Brett knows, therefore that's good. There are a number of efforts in the social area of social justice. They're listed here, some of the seed groups that are organizing. You can find out more and be involved. The Charles Avenue Community Cupboard is open on Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and Sundays, and the food that is available there for people who need food is food that the people in this congregation donate. So please recognize that that's something that you can do as well. And then there are notes about parking. That is not an exciting thing to talk about on a Sunday morning, but we do, those of us who are staff people and get to park in the staff parking area, actually do hope that many of you will avoid parking behind the cars that are there, because there have been some car gymnastics that have had to happen to extricate cars. So thank you for your care in that. This congregation takes up an offering every week, every Sunday, to remind ourselves of a couple of things. One is that this congregation exists because of the generosity and the faith and expectations of its members and friends, and also because it is one of the easiest and most direct ways for this congregation to contribute to the organizations, usually in the community or elsewhere, that are doing the work that our values and principles tell us is essential in the world. There is one exception to that outside the congregation rule for the shared offering, and that is the couple of times a year that we share with this congregation's discretionary fund, which is a fund dedicated for individuals in need. These gifts, your gifts, add up and become a vital safety net for members, friends, and neighbors in the wider community, perhaps helping a family stay in their home, have enough to eat, assisting with medical, legal, or transportation costs. This fund, the discretionary fund, transforms our shared resources into direct care and action for those facing life's sudden hardships and emergencies. So your generosity today makes an enormous difference. You can give online, you can give in person, however it makes sense for you. But please give generously. This morning's offering will now be most gratefully received.
Thanks, Miles. There are actually no yellow cards today, but that doesn't mean that there are no concerns or no joys. And there might be some things that people are thinking about but didn't want to write about, so we'll just take a little bit of silence so that people can think about what's going on with them.
God loves everyone all around the world, and everyone's special, and all the creation.
Amen. That's okay. I think one of the sorrows that many of us may have felt in this past week was around the death of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I think it was last Tuesday. I had the incredible honor to hear the Reverend Jesse Jackson speak at an event, and he was electrifying. And the event was the annual meeting of the American Public Health Association. And public health, as I hope you know, is very concerned with what we call the determinants of health, things like access to healthy food, safe housing, employment opportunities, neighborhood safety, that kind of thing. And today, in my reflection, I'd like to talk to you about two important social movements emerging from and designed for the Black community, but which have benefited all Americans. So first I want to talk about the Black Panthers in the 1960s. So the Black Panther Party, while explicitly militant, also had a visionary program of mutual aid. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale founded the party in 1966 with the original goal of ending police brutality, a fight we're still fighting today. Many white people were intimidated by the sight of Afroed Black men carrying guns under the open carry policies at the time. The Black Panther Party was vilified in the media. As the party grew, over time, its mandate expanded to include social programs. The Black Panthers started community services in 1969, including health clinics, to build community self-determination. One of their most important service programs was the Free Breakfast for School Children program, which started in a single church in 1969 and quickly spread to chapters in 23 cities by the end of that year, with local businesses, churches, and community-based organizations donating space for the program and nutritious foods like eggs, grits, toast, and milk. And you can see on the slide, there's a picture of one of the members of the Black Panther Party serving breakfast to school children. And all school children, regardless of race or ethnicity, were invited to the breakfast if they were hungry. The Free Breakfast for School Children program fed tens of thousands of children, many of whom woke up hungry, got to school hungry, and tried to learn while hungry. Teachers observed that the kids being fed breakfast were no longer falling asleep in class, and they weren't crying from stomach cramps. The success of this program helped to counter the public's negative image of the Black Panthers. Filmmaker Roger Guenveur Smith, who portrayed Black Panther Party founder Huey P. Newton in a 2001 film, said, I mean, nobody can argue with free grits. As it turns out, somebody could argue with free grits, and that was FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, who stated in 1969 that of all the radical Black groups, the Panthers were, quote, without question, the greatest threat to the internal security of the country because of the free breakfast program. The fact that the Black Panther Party was successful in engaging Americans of all races and backgrounds increased the threat, in his view. He gave carte blanche to law enforcement to destroy the party, and those attempts were largely successful. So let's fast forward now to 2013, the first time that the hashtag Black Lives Matter was used on social media. Now, to confess, for many years, I only knew Black Lives Matter as a hashtag or a sign that somebody was holding or a theme of a protest or a flag. But when I looked into the movement for Black Lives, I found so much more. This movement has a vision, it has a policy platform that can revolutionize not only the American Black experience, but the experience of so many other oppressed groups. While the movement for Black Lives is by, about, and for Black people, it benefits everyone. Let me read you some of the titles of policy statements released by the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. BLM Foundation endorses Medicare for All legislation. Black Lives Matter Global Network responds to Senate Intelligence Committee reports. Roe v. Wade can infuriate us, but it will not stop our movement. Statement from Black Lives Matter Global Network on fraudulent social media accounts. And finally, BLM stands against Trump's policy separating children and families. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation provides organizing toolkits and resources, including millions of dollars in mutual aid-style microgrants. Furthermore, this movement is completely decentralized and is meant to empower local communities in the way that works for them. There's no single figurehead, just a call to communities to empower themselves. We are hungry for justice and an end to oppression and equality. And the Movement for Black Lives has these resources, funds, guidance, and toolkits that are the free grits for our hunger for social justice efforts. These generous offerings can give us sustenance and energy to sustain and strengthen our community, and nobody can argue with free grits.
Thank you, Pam. When, as a baby minister, one needs to learn how to write a sermon, advice is helpful. Well, maybe not all advice is helpful, but some of it from elders and mentors who actually know what they're doing. Here are 2 rules that I was taught early on as I was learning to craft a sermon. Number 1, be careful in a sermon about saying we, the kind of we that lumps all people together. This is how people are. This is how people like us believe and act and behave. The truth, of course, is that people are not all alike, definitely not all like me or even us. And the danger is that one can sound unmeaningly, unintentionally, one can sound the very opposite of inclusive. The second rule that I was taught is don't talk too much about yourself. It might be a good story, but that doesn't mean it's a sermon. These are pretty good rules still. And I've learned sometimes it's important not to follow even really good rules too closely. This sermon is the 4th in a series that I'm offering this year. A series that I have called Stories That Got Us This Far. I'm trying for you, and frankly for me, to get a glimpse into the evolution of our really pretty young religious tradition over the last few centuries in this country of ours. Who and what are we? Unitarian Universalism. It's possible to find an answer to that big question, I believe. It's possible to find an answer by looking at our Unitarian Universalist actions and priorities and professions of faith over time. going back to the 18th century, as well as the 19th and the 20th century, none of which were quite the same as this one, the 21st. And while it might seem best to think of those actions and priorities and professions of faith as coming purely out of our moral grounding, our values, even our faith, in fact, I believe that our actions and priorities and professions of faith are always in response to the life and the history that is happening around us. And when I say us, I don't mean just us individually, but us as an association of congregations. So here are the 5. This is number 4. The first sermon was about universalism and how, as an alternative voice, what Betsy was just saying about how God loves the whole world, that was a really challenging idea. And even though the Universalists got to be few in number, that idea stayed there, making people question some of their assumptions. The second one, maybe strangely, was actually about Christmas and about how Unitarians and Universalists actually changed religion and culture and ideas about children and generosity and hope by celebrating Christmas. Last month, I talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and how, because he believed in Unitarian Universalists and challenged us to be actors in the biggest struggle for justice in our unequal country, how, because of that, what happened in 1965, I think, changed who we are, who we were then and who we are now. And today, I'm going to talk about how that story, Unitarian Universalists as actors struggling for justice, especially racial justice, is changing everything. I tried to figure out how I might structure this look back at Unitarian Universalism in the last half century, and I had several different ideas that I considered and discarded about lists of events and responses that I could catalog. And then I decided to use my own life as an organizing tool. There goes that second rule. Not because my life is any sort of perfect example, but because I know it pretty well. And because you all have the same tool. You have your life that you've lived, and you have noticed the ways in which you have changed, been changed by things that happen and your reaction to them. And that's not at all a bad way to start understanding how we've all changed. So I have a really fat file of sermons and orders of service about anti-racism and justice that I've collected over the last 3 decades. Actually, I don't print things out as much anymore, but I have a lot. And I was looking through it, and I found a couple of pages of a sermon that I wrote in 1998 in my second year of parish ministry in a new congregation in Rhode Island. Here's part of what I wrote. People come to church, to whatever congregation, because they want to change. I believe that for myself. I believe it for everyone who comes here and keeps on coming. We come because the world is the way it is, not the way it should be. There is too much hatred and cruelty and injustice. Too many children who are hungry and sad. Too many people who are angry and hurting. The world is run not by fairness and love, but by money and power. Most people are cut off from most of the money and most of the power because their skin is a different color than that of the people in charge, or because they speak or look or walk or think differently, or because they love somebody who is the same gender instead of the opposite one. We come to church because the world is not as it should be, as our principles teach us it must be. We come, I believe, because religious communities, churches, synagogues, ashrams, whatever, are some of the best ways that we people have for changing society. Because the work of religious community is to change people, more accurately, to create environments in which individuals can change themselves and each other, and thereby change the world. I kind of remember writing this and thinking, if people listen carefully, they might be a little freaked out by what I just said. Because, of course, the watchword for Unitarian Universalism, and it's still true, is that we are all loved, we are all good, should come as we are. Change is not what our religious tradition is insisting on before we can be part of it. But this idea, I actually don't know quite where I got this faith in religious community. It was not from the Catholicism that I grew up in, to be sure, which explicitly does not teach that kind of faith in human capacity, that people can change, can figure out what things should change and should change one another for the good. Where is God in that? Is the message, the question that Catholicism might ask. So I didn't get it from church. I didn't really get it from my parents either, who were good people, who were thoughtful, kind, normal Americans. Which meant, among other things, that they did not teach my siblings and me about the injustice of the system in which we were participants. I talk to my siblings every Saturday morning, and I asked them yesterday before we hung up, I said, do any of you remember mom or dad talking to us about race or racism ever in your life? And we all answered no. It was not a topic in my house. So I didn't get it from my parents. And in school, when I was in school, the message was that slavery and all of the other horrible cruelty was bad, but it was behind us. It was in the past. Good things had happened. Brown v. Board of Education, the March on Washington, all the protests and sacrifices had changed something fundamental in hearts and minds, I thought. I was taught. Maybe not everybody's hearts and minds, but most. Things are different now. That was the message that I was taught. Many things have happened. I will spare you the long list. But what I want to talk to you about is where I was and what happened to me because of the congregation that I was serving in the year 2015. You all remember 2015? Remember where you were? Okay, I know you were in school, but 2014, as Pam just said, Black Lives Matter organized itself in 2013. I believe that's right. In 2014, and in response to Trayvon Martin's murder in Florida. But many of us, or at least I'll just say for myself, the time that I became aware of it and thought about Black Lives Matter differently was after Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri. That was in August of 2014. So in 2014, I had moved to serve the congregation, the UU congregation, the small fellowship in Charleston, West Virginia. And I almost remember the Sunday that I was preaching. Maybe it was in the days leading up to the Sunday when I was thinking, what do I say to people in this sermon I am going to write about Black Lives Matter and us and what we should do? What should I say? And the honest truth was, I didn't feel up to that task. I didn't know. I knew all the right things to say, Unitarian Universalism had been teaching me, had been giving me the language and the words for years. I actually looked up last night on the UUA.org. In the search bar, I put racial justice resolutions at General Assembly. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times that when the association gathers with its representatives at General Assembly, we pass yet another resolution saying that racial justice is it, or justice is it, and we need to do this, and we need to say that, and we need to commit. I've been to General Assembly when that happened, so I knew that I could just look online and I could find some good language and I could put it in the sermon, and I thought, I don't know really what to do. So I don't know how to do this sincerely and have it be coming from me. So I told stories. That's what I like to do. I had preached to that congregation in Charleston, West Virginia, about some UU congregations in Missouri who were showing up with their bodies on the streets, who were advocating for Black Lives Matter. And one of those churches was served at that point by a colleague of mine that I'd known in Pennsylvania. And I knew that her people were out on the street. And I said, what if the Charleston congregation were to raise some money to help you all do more of this public witness work? And my friend, the minister working for a church that never had enough money, said, sure, that'd be fine. And I said, great, I will ask them. And the way we'd like to give it to you is, I think, is with no strings at all. We're not going to give you money to improve this program or that educational thing or whatever. We're just going to give you some money. From Charleston, West Virginia to St. Louis, and you can figure out what to do with it. That was a very fun, interesting, unpredictable Sunday when I made that call out to people, and a bunch of people thought that that was a really good idea without really realizing it, because I was doing it as a thing I knew how to do because there was so much I didn't know how to do. And I shouldn't have been surprised. But I was a little surprised when some people in the Charleston congregation during coffee hour, we hadn't even left yet, somebody came up with a torn out of a notebook piece of paper with a handwritten resolution that the UU congregation at Charleston is supporting Black Lives Matter. And we need to put up a banner so that it's clear. Now you need to understand that though Black Lives Matter banners were going up all over the country and all over in every UU congregation that I knew about, nothing had shown up in Charleston, West Virginia yet. No banners, nothing. No churches that had come out in support of this. So these people had pulled out a piece of paper, they'd scribbled something on it, and they handed it to me during social hour. And I am grateful for the fact that I had the presence of mind to say, I'm not the right person to give this to. You need to take this to the board, because this isn't my call. This is your call as a congregation. So they did that day. And then the board surprised me, because I figured that they would say yes. Yes, of course. This is a congregation that puts signs up on its building all the time. They've been in West Virginia and advocating for marriage equality. Actually, 2015 was the year that I think that changed in West Virginia too, yes. But I thought they would say yes, but because of the wisdom of the person who was the president of the board at the time, they said, not yet. Because this congregation needs to learn more about what we're saying when we say that, and what we are challenging ourselves to do and be. So we're going to take some months, and we're going to have programs, we're going to have speakers, we're going to have study groups, we're going to have whatever we can come up with, and we're going to partner with other groups in the city, because when we put up this banner, first of all, we're going to have a vote. Most UU congregations didn't do that. Does anybody remember, did CVUUS have a vote to put up Black Lives Matter on this building? I asked Laura, she didn't know. Most congregations didn't, that I've run into, which I think is interesting. But Charleston decided that they needed to do this. They were small and they wanted to do this. And so they did. They spent months having these programs. And it was a tough winter, but they just kept on doing it. And a really surprising thing happened. Oh, so as part of that effort, the woman who was in charge and had been for decades, long before I had been in the congregation, in charge of the Sunday morning discussion group, it was a different topic every Sunday. Pretty deliberately not a religious topic, but topics. She advertised that on a particular Sunday, there would be a debate about Black Lives Matter. I would be on one side, and a member of the congregation who didn't support that particular effort would be on the other side. And I said, what? I said, what? But by that time, it was way too late. So there I was on a Sunday morning with my antagonist, I guess, because it was a debate and we had to go back and forth. And there were all these people sitting in the back of the room that I had never seen before. And a number of them were black. And I thought, this is interesting. I actually do not think that I won the debate, nor did I necessarily cover myself with glory for my articulateness or anything else. But I stayed there. I didn't leave. And then I started talking. I went up and introduced myself to some of the people in the back of the room. All of them men, African-American men that I had not seen before. And it turns out that they were people who either were alive in the 1970s when the city of Charleston did what many cities did, which was to declare the dominated by black culture, black churches, black businesses, and black people, that part of the city, they declared it blighted, so they could bulldoze everything, so that the government buildings and the new mall and the highway could go through the city of Charleston. They fought it in courts. They even won some of the battles, but they lost the war. And that is the way Charleston looks now. And if you don't know this, this is actually true of many, many, many cities. Jean's nodding her head. I mean, it's the whole story of urban development and racism all tangled up together. But some of these men who were at this little debate, at this little tiny UU fellowship, were remembering that story. Many of them had left town. One had moved to California. And I can still, and he hadn't been back in years. He didn't come back because of what was happening at the congregation, but he came back because the world was changing, maybe. And I remember talking to him and having him, well, I remember the look on his face. I remember the despair that he felt because they had tried, they'd done all the right things, and they'd still lost their city. They had lost the part of the city that had nurtured them, that was their home. Maybe it wasn't too late. It was an amazing period of time where people who didn't ordinarily talk to each other were talking to each other about things that they didn't ordinarily talk about. Just in that few months between when the board said we're going to do this and when the vote happened, which was 5 months later. And that experience changed my understanding of what ministry is utterly and completely. And I realized that I needed to get my own plan and goal out of the way as the minister so that surprising things could happen and we could all respond to them. I'm a little surprised. It feels to me like I knew what I was talking about in 1998, even though I didn't know what I was talking about in 1998, but I lived it in Charleston. And I've lived it again in Cleveland and in Burlington, and I think here. The thing that I want to leave you with, I said a few weeks ago when I was talking about what was the abolition movement and what was happening before the racial justice movement in the 1960s, was referencing the response to the fugitive slave law. Remember I talked about that? It was passed in 1850. This was the law that was supposed to placate the slave-owning part of our population by saying that, yeah, you should actually get your escaped, enslaved person back if they've escaped. Yes, because you own them, or will compensate you. And it backfired in a wonderful way. But the reason it backfired is because the black people in the North, some of whom had been enslaved, some of whom were free black people, were being disappeared. They were being disappeared by slave hunters who would benefit from this. And people were not okay with that. People who were ambivalent about slavery were not okay with their neighbors being disappeared. Which probably reminds you of something, because it certainly reminds me of something. And there was an article in the, if you get the New Yorker or can access it in the New Yorker by Jelani Cobb, who said, you know, in order to understand what's happening in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, we just need to look back to the 1850s and see how people responded to people that they knew, neighbors that they knew who were being taken. That personal feeling, it's not really intellectual, it's personal, was what moved people then and what is moving people now to respond to a law, to injustice, and to laws that are unjust in ways that are hard to plan, which is a good thing. I want to end this by reading a tiny clip from a social media site called Twin City Geeks, Geeks, Twin City Geeks, where I've gotten a lot of wonderful news about Minnesota. And I don't know who wrote this. Resistance in Minnesota isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, daily refusals to accept the unacceptable. Whether it is a whistle blown on a quiet street, a grocery delivery to a frightened neighbor, or taking action on educating others on important new legislation, these actions help mend the fabric of our community. We do not have to solve the whole problem to make a difference. We just have to protect what is in front of us. We don't have to solve the whole problem to make a difference. We just have to protect what is in front of us. Our challenge today as Unitarian Universalists and as citizens and as human beings. So may it be. Let's sing one more time together. The song is number 6 in your gray hymnal, and the title is Just as Long as I Have Breath. Please rise or not and sing.
Still will know
Just a reminder that for each of these 5 Sundays, I'm very happy to sit and talk with anyone who wants to talk about the sermon or anything else about Unitarian Universalism. I think we're going to gather right over here, so get a cup of tea and bring it back up and we'll talk for not very long. The closing words today are from Jesse Jackson. Leaders, he said, leaders must be tough enough to fight, tender enough to cry, human enough to make mistakes, humble enough to admit them, strong enough to absorb the pain, and resilient enough to bounce back and keep on moving. Let us speak together the words that we say as we extinguish the chalice.